Hello and welcome back to the channel. I am Jeremy of Brendle Concepts, and today is going to be it's going to be a lengthy episode, but it's going to be a good episode. Last time I was here, I said that we were going to get into making custom fender liners, and that is what I am getting into today. I have just finished doing the last test drive on this thing before moving on to fiberglass, so everything's good to go. I had these tests fit already, did the turning, made sure everything cleared. This is, one of those times where I'm actually kind of happy to do this stuff because I think this is going to be an episode that a lot of people want to see, just, not even pertaining to this build, but I mean, just in general. We've all been in a situation where we've modified our car in such a way or are going to, and the fender liners just do not work anymore. And you want to put something back in there. And this is kind of what I've come up with over the years. So we are going to go through every step of the process to make custom ABS plastic fender liners. And I'm going to start from template, all the way out to cutting and, even making the perforated mesh pattern in this piece. So like I said, it's going to be lengthy. I'm going to do my best to explain everything in depth. Sorry for getting this video out a little bit later, but there's just so much that I wanted to put into this because, like I said, I think there's a lot of knowledge for people here and I wanted to put a lot of effort into it. So what we're going to do is start in the front end here. Obviously, the back has been done. I was able to use the OEM fender liners. The front, however, was the major issue. So we're going to start in sequence of how I actually made them, which was starting on the rear of the front wheel well. From there, we will explain how I did the front side. So, like I said, just bear with me. Make sure you save this, subscribe if you aren't already subscribing. There's going to be a lot of really good information, even about like template making and understanding how to figure out where to start. So yeah, I guess with that, let's just get to it. So we are now looking at the rear side of the front wheel well, and this is basically what I wanted to show you was what I had to cover up. Sorry, I'm just laying my template down, but the main area that I had to cover up was right here. You can see my pencil, my red pencil. This is the reservoir for windshield washer fluid. So this needed to be covered up along with this giant gaping hole here and all this wiring. The main problem for me was up in this section, the fender liner, the OEM fender liner, I was making contact with it right up in here. So whenever I would go lock to lock, it would actually just hit it and pull. There was no way it was going to work. So from there, it was pretty much, a matter of determining how much usable space I had left. And on the rear, there really wasn't a whole lot of room, but I was able to determine that I was able to keep this stud right here. And I have a nut that I will put on. So this stud was basically where I was able to determine my starting point for my template. And I was looking at the area of the body that I wanted to cover, knowing that I wanted to cover up in this section and keep it tight. And looking down from there, I was able to determine these two other mounting points. Now these are just the factory mounting points, and I have the screws that can go in there. Having a great hand day. All right. So these 3 points were what I used to determine the mounting location for my template, and also kind of used it to reference the area that I wanted to cover. This section in here, obviously there's nothing that I can secure to, so I'm going to have to add 90-degree brackets that I will bond to the inside at a later time. But I just knew that I needed to keep, cover up this area. So from there, I was able to start with my templates. Now, for me, I have found over the years that starting with tracing paper like this for fender liners works exceptionally well. And reason being is it's semi-transparent, so you can shine a flashlight behind it and see kind of what's going on. So if you want to make a mark as to, like, you want to cut a section out, or you want to see where a bolt really is, you can kind of, see behind it. Makes it really handy. Plus it's a little bit, I don't know, it's fairly rigid, so it holds up to shape pretty well, especially if you put a little tape to it. So I came up with a basic pattern like this, and it really resembles one of those styrofoam hands with given the P symbol. Yeah. But I'm going to show you how I bolted it in. The very first piece I made was this long piece, and it was really just using a full sheet of tracing paper, which is kind of this square that you see here. From here you can see I was able to rough in my shape to clear this stud and give me the room I wanted down here. From there it was just a matter of adding another sheet of paper down in this area to find the bolt hole. Which is easier said than done, because this tracing paper, I don't want to rip it. Go. So once I had this in place, I was able to rough in my shapes, add more tracing paper, and come up with my overall template. And from there, I was able to transfer it over to another template. And we'll go look at the templates now. So here is basically the series of progression of templates to the final product for the rear side of the front wheel well. And I thought it might make a little bit of sense to do this just so you can see the process. So this is essentially the shape that I came up with my first go round. Like I said, it kind of looks like one of those styrofoam like hands given the P symbol. I don't know. But anyway, this was the shape that I came up with. And once I came up with this shape, obviously there needed to be revisions. I realized there were other areas that I could cover seeing how much surface that I had to now work with. From there, I was able to come up with this. And you can see basically it was up in this corner here, I was able to make revisions and add more area of coverage, to block off more sections of the wheel well. After I had this white template made up, it was pretty much, at that point ready to go into the final ABS plastic, and this stuff is textured. So you can see this textured side. I really like it. I think it gives it kind of a nice, factory look to it. But the other side is just a glossy black. But, I lay down, painter's tape, and I trace my template over my plastic just like this. From there, it was just a matter of cutting it out, and we'll get into cutting it out later. But I wanted to show the process of how I came up with making these templates so that I can show you how it actually looks going in. Now, there was one section, and it was right down in here, that I had to extend. So even though this was essentially the finished product, this corner had to be extended down an additional 3/8 of an inch. So I had to make an additional piece, and I will show you how that one bolts in now. All right, so I'm going to try and install this liner here, and really what I was going for was to fill in as much here as possible, protect this bottle, all this electrical here, covering as much of this area in here as I could, and leave this upper section pretty much as it is. This was my final product. You'll have to bear with me trying to install this, trying to do it so you can see, but that I cannot. It's not easy. So, see how it goes. And, like I said earlier, when I make this stuff, I always try and find the factory points that I can tie into. Just makes everything so much easier. Sometimes you can't, sometimes you can. I got lucky with this one. So there you go. You pretty much get the idea. This side, like I said, I'm going to have to put brackets on the inside of the fender here and put some holes, and I'll put some plastic, kind of like the OEM style push pins, just to make it easy to come off, so that all you need is these, hardware and then OEM pullers. So yeah, it'll look nice and clean. But it did a really good job. Like I said, when I had this thing out on the test drive, I pulled this off and there was really nothing behind it. So all in all, I gotta say, works pretty good. We'll take a look at the front side next. So this was definitely the trickiest section. And this is really what I wanted to show the most of, was this front end here. You have a lot going on. You have the intercooler, you have the headlight, you have this brake duct vent back here. So you have a lot of moving parts. And this template really took a lot of time. And I will show you what I came up with. And I'm going to get this thing installed so I can kind of explain it, so you get a better understanding of what I did here. All right, so now that this thing is installed, what I essentially had to do was add all these different areas of tracing paper, and it allowed me to visually see where all these components were. Now, it's really hard to show this process on camera. This stuff, working with this tracing paper, all these edges, I had tape, holding everything in place all the way around. I'm literally just holding things in place right now just to kind of reference it so you get the idea. But, seeing the intercooler here and being able to see behind it allowed me to kind of create the opening that I wanted to visually see, how big I wanted it. Same with going around this brake duct, because when I was identifying all the location points, I didn't really have that much in the front end that I thought I could go off of. I was actually kind of wrong, and I was surprised because I had this mounting point right here that I did not think that I was going to be able to use. I thought that it was going to make the fender liner kind of buckle and contort, and it actually doesn't. But really, the only other place I had was this brake duct vent right here, and I needed to keep these factory points. The other thing is I had this belly pan, and some people are quick, to ditch these plastic parts, but you kind of got to remember that all this stuff bolts together, and when it does, it makes everything rigid. So when you start removing these plastic parts, you also start losing rigidity in the front end of your plastic. So keeping this stuff was important. Ultimately, I was able to reuse my factory mounting point down here. There was a white factory keeper nut down here. I was able to switch that over to my plastic, and I can show you that. And that's how I was able to bolt it in. I actually have to slip my new fender liner in behind this lip. Now, to do that created all kinds of issues. And right in here, I had to take a lot of plastic out of the bumper right here, but I had to be careful because there are little retaining tabs for the factory winglet on the side here. So I had to stay away from those, but still take away from the plastic, as well as the intercooler mounting housing right here. So there used to be like a 90-degree turnout on this metal. I actually had to cut it off and grind this all down so that the fender liner can, clear everything inside to get the turning radius I need. So there was quite a bit of work that went in to get these fender liners to work up here. We'll go look at the templates, and I can explain what I did to get to the final product. So this piece was a real treat to make. I had multiple templates and multiple versions till I finally got it right. And this really, right here, this was the first one. This is what I initially came up with. This gave me my brake duct, this gave me my intercooler, this covered my headlight. And that was pretty much everything that I thought I was going to get. So I moved on and went to this stuff. Now this stuff right here is poster board, but it's got a grid pattern on the back. I don't know if you can actually see it or not, but if you find this stuff, it's just a little bit thicker than regular poster board. So it holds its rigidity and shape just a little bit better. When I do fender liners, I really like, like I said, tracing paper, and then this grid poster board works really well. Once I got to that, I was able to transfer over to my ABS again, and I came up with this. Now this one, you can see what I did was cut a hole out. And originally I had put a piece of mesh screen behind this. What ended up happening was the mesh with the bolts actually made the plastic kind of, I don't know, wavy. And it didn't look very good. And on top of that, it fit really bad. So what I ended up having to do was make a new version, which is this one. And this is my final version, the one that actually fits in the car, works great. And you can see, this is what I was talking about, that little factory keeper right here. I was able to take that from the belly pan or the chin pan and put this right on my fender liner. This was simply a process of marking every hole from my mesh and drilling it out, and then using a little countersink bit to deburr it and give it a little, kind of texture, or make it look like stamped steel. I'll show you how I did all that when we actually make the duplicate of this. But yeah, so that was everything that it took to make this piece, and now we can go see how it fits. So we're going to go ahead and install this fender liner, and first thing I want to point out is this white keeper again. This used to be on the outside here on this lip. Now the OEM fender liner bolted to the outside. For me, I needed the space clearance wise, so I had to tuck everything behind. Again, and you'll see where I was able to pick up my 4 mounting points. So you'll have to bear with me. Again, kind of awkward putting it in when I can't really see what's going on. But give it my best shot here. And a lot of times, like case in point down here where the mounting clip was removable, a lot of times if you need clearance, you can simply just take it from the original piece and put it on your piece, and keep everything factory as far as mounting, goes, which is always nice. And this one way up in here. Kind of hard to see. And there we have it. So all in all, I'm really happy with how this one turned out. I was able to keep, this area perforated for airflow for the intercooler. The original one had pretty much like fins that were directional. It wasn't something that I could duplicate because I needed the space in here for the tire to clear. So next best thing for me was, making this perforated, pattern in the ABS. To make things simple, like originally I would have just put aluminum, but like I said, it made the ABS kind of not conform correctly, and didn't fit very well. But this is what I was able to come up with. Again, leaving this upper section open for wheel and tire clearance. I still have a section up in here for the intake that I need to close off, or I could just run a different intake. I'm kind of either or at this point, because to be honest with you, this is only going to go to like shows or promotional events. So the chance of it seeing rain are pretty much slim and none. So, eventually when this car goes on and is sold to the new owner, they can also, swap out intakes if they want, whatever. So it's not really that big of a deal. It's just, I am aware of it, and it's something that I can address, if I feel I need to. So that's pretty much, what these things look like installed now. I'm very happy with the way they look. Very clean. very factory looking, especially with how I have that lip that I built into my panels. So now we're going to get into cutting one. We're going to actually make one for the other side. So we'll take a look at that. Okay, so we are going to make one of these fender liners, and I am going to do my best to kind of tap dance around both sides of the table here so that I can record it. There's really not a good way for me to demonstrate this any other way than this, so this is how we're going to do it. First thing I'm going to do is talk about what we need. We are going to use tin snips to cut everything. They work really well. If you have, directional ones, left, right, straight, that makes your life a lot easier. However, this does cut really easy. So I'm right-handed. I'm just going to use these righties. It works just fine. The other thing, painter's tape and my fine tip marker. That is all we're going to need. Now, I've gone ahead and test fit this fender liner, and most times fender liners are universal from side to side, meaning that they mirror. So for the passenger side of the car, I wanted the textured side to show. For the driver's side of the car, however, to make it work, we need to trace the shiny side. So, to make things easy, I simply wrote up on this side, just, for reference. And this is the side we are going to want to trace. Now, we want the textured side also on the, driver's side, just like we have it on the passenger side. So we're going to have the textured side basically touching each other to make our new piece. And to start off, I'm just going to start down here. Start off by dropping my tape, which is always a good sign. Now this ABS, I'm going to be making trim panels for inside the body panels that I made to cover up the parking sensors and body cavities. So I want to save, as much as I can to use at a later time. So I'm going to kind of, put this in a spot where I'm saving as much material as possible. But I'm also going to leave myself, plenty of material to trim just to make my life easier. Once I get that started or figure out where I want it, you can kind of do it one of two ways. You can do it like this, where you simply tape it in place. And now from here, I can say, oh, from here to here, I want a piece of tape to go like this, and this will keep your piece kind of where you want it. You can do it that way. I kind of just put it on there and start taping stuff off. I mean, when you kind of know the shape, you just kind of guess. And it's not like tape's super expensive. Time is really kind of more of the killer, for me anyway. So once I have a spot, like I can say, I want to cheat it over. Say like that. I just make two little reference lines. That way I can kind of line it up the same way over and over again. Like I said, I'm leaving myself a lot of material to trim off. I have found that leaving small slivers of this ABS to trim off makes it harder to cut. So leave a good portion of material to trim and it cuts actually much easier. But yeah, so from here, we're just going to keep taping. So this whole section from basically this corner to this corner looks really good. I'll move up here. You know, by all means, if this is kind of trivial to you, move on, you know, fast forward, do what you want to do. Some people have never seen something like this before. So I try and cover, you know, basics, even if it's, you know, really, really basic. Like I said, some people just haven't seen stuff before. So I don't know. Just trying to help people out. The other thing about the painter's tape, I will say, is around the corner, like this radius, I actually want to put quite a bit of tape because it does help it cut cleaner. I don't know, honestly, I have no idea why. If it's just that little extra bit of, you know, material helps the blade, but it does help give it a cleaner cut, like I said, in these areas. So when I'm going around a place like this, you'll see I actually kind of give it quite a bit of tape. And that's on purpose. It's just a little thing I do. You know, right here, this corner, I'm not too concerned because this is a straight cut and a straight cut. So I don't need a whole lot of tape. You know, it's pretty easy to get that. But when you're trying to nibble around something, the ABS kind of wants to, I don't know, twist and bend. Now this section in here, I have to notch out. So I like to kind of add more tape, again, just kind of for stability when I cut it. It just helps it. I don't know. Little things that I find that maybe it's just all in my head or I only encounter it once or twice, but if I find it that it seems to work consistently, then I consistently try and do it the same way. So basically this whole top section is really supported with that tape down and through here. And I'm going to do the same thing over up in here. And then I just have that final line. So that's pretty much as much tape as I need here. I have, you know, tape behind all holes. At this point, you know, we're good to go. So I'm just going to tape it in place and then just trace it. I like to pick up my tape points on straight edges, like really straight edges, just because me being me, a lot of times I'm in a hurry to do something where I'm just, you know, used to doing stuff a certain way, and I'll forget to finish off a trace line. So if you're like me and you kind of forget that, it's very easy to take your template out of the way. And if you forget, you can just take a straight edge and finish out the line, no harm, no foul. Whereas if you have like a curve, you know, a radius or whatever, you know, and you want to duplicate that, if you take your template off and you forget, you know, then you have to put it all back on. So, you know, just pick up points that make sense to you. That way, if you're like me and you forget something, very easy to fix. So now me, first thing I like to do is just mark my holes, just because I have a habit of forgetting them. So if I get it out of the way, I won't forget them. And you can oversize the holes. The factory bolts or studs inside are an M5, I believe. But they have large washers around the bolt and the nuts. So you can actually, oversize the hole and give yourself a lot of play. So marking center is pretty easy, and you can build in a lot of forgiveness. So now that I got the holes, marked in place, just a matter of tracing. And again, I like these fine tip markers for accuracy. Being able to cut, on that very thin line, reproduces things very accurately. If you use a fat marker, and you get that fat line, center of that line can vary. Whereas with this, the center of this line is a very fine line. You're more inclined to be accurate in your cut. So that's why I use these markers. Same with when I'm trying to figure out body work. I will use a marker like this to take away, a 1/16th out of time. Simply going along a line and tracing it, and then sand it away. So here's one of my spots. I really like using this ABS. It's pretty durable, and it's pretty easy to tell if you're going to have issues, because when you bolt it in place, like this one being black, if it's bolted in really hard and you look at the back side, the shiny side, it'll show like stress. It'll actually turn white. So you can also kind of use it as a gauge as to how much stress you're putting on this stuff. And there are tricks that you can do if the offset inside the wheel well is really bad. I have already taken ABS, pre-made ABS spacers, and used ABS glue and glued spacers on the backside to offset, so that when you bolt things in, it's not as hard on the plastic. Just a little tip, the more stress you put on these things, the more likely you are to have failure down the line over time. So when you're tracing stuff like this, take your time, push down on everything, make sure it's tight. I can't tell you how many times over the years I've had to train people in simply, understanding that you need to keep this stuff down. You can't just, freehand it. Comes out different every time, or not accurate, that's for sure. If something slips and your hand is on it, you'll feel it move, and you'll know that you're off, and then you can reset. If you're not keeping pressure on this thing and understanding what it's doing at all times, it's a good way to end up with parts that are made poorly or incorrectly. Go away. I did. I traced over it. Go me. Didn't even see it. Awesome lighting. See? Told you I'm terrible at that. Traced right over my tape. All right, so that should be it, actually. Now that I feel pretty good about it, we can take it off. See what it looks like. And yeah. This is a really good duplicate of, you know, what we already have. Only difference is the textured side now is facing this way. So next thing up is going to be drill our holes and cutting. And we'll show you how I cut it. All right, so we're going to cut this thing out. And again, I apologize, but this is the best way I can get this on camera. Like I said, I'm just going to use these snips, and I'm going to cut right on this line, except for the areas that need to be notched, like this. Like this one I'll do on my belt sander. This I will do by hand, by file. This I will cut and then file. You'll see. But so we are just going to simply start cutting. Like I said, this stuff cuts actually pretty easy with this. And I'm just really, like I said, cutting right on that line. It's not that difficult. Got a good old shine from the lighting though, so that makes it interesting. But I'm just simply squeezing, and then I squeeze and then I just guide the blade underneath, and then squeeze again. It's not like scissors where you're kind of nibbling. It's more like, I don't know, it's a shear that's moving, let's just put it that way. Kind of like cutting steel. If you have a spot that you want to start in, I just make little triangular notches that I can get this thing in here. I have plenty of room to start. If I was doing this with like a cutoff wheel, I would just kind of cut this in sheet. So same idea. And then I can just cut along that line. And I'm good right up to that point. So now this little piece here just going to cut right up to the corner, and I'll come over to this side. Same thing. Cut that little piece out. Cut a little section out. Now I have this little triangular nub here. I can just take a file and actually file that straight. So that little section I can just leave alone. That's that. And for me, it's just, obviously I've made these before, so I know where to cut to make my life easier. But usually I just work my way around, and when I'm going one direction, I do all the same cuts in that direction, and I come back and do the other direction. So now, like, I know getting into this section right here, it's going to be easier for me to start my cut here and then end by chopping this section off. So that's just how I'm going to cut it. But like I said, I know how I made these before, so I know which cuts in what direction made my life harder and easier. Now this little section here, I'm not going to cut. I'm actually going to sand that. So I'm just going to cut right on by it. And like here, I'm not actually moving the snips, I'm moving the part. So I'm just squeezing, feeding the part, through it, lining it up and squeezing again, kind of, like shears. So like I said, it's just different. It's not like using scissors and kind of nibbling away. So you can see that's, I'll cut. So that's pretty much the piece. Next thing up will be actually notching out that back end over there with a file, and then hitting this with a belt sander and doing the holes. So we'll do those parts next. All right, I apologize. The audio cut out in this video, so I'm going to have to simply talk over it. First thing I'm pointing out here is the hole in the door that I use for my workbench. I like to use a door like this simply because of that hole. It works really good for drilling as well as filing. You can get really close to the edge and it makes a good surface. Here I'm simply going to start drilling my pilot holes for my fender liners. I made those marks, transferred from the other side. And I'm just using a little pilot hole bit that I like to use. I like to use it because it makes a very clean cut through the plastic. It doesn't leave a lot of shavings, and it makes a really straight cut. Next I'm going to do is the final hole. And these I was using, I believe, a 5/16 drill bit. The studs in the wheel wells are actually an M5. So you can, have a little bit of forgiveness and oversize the holes here and allow for a little bit of wiggle room to allow the fender liner to kind of move. So, if you're not dead nuts, perfect center on the holes, don't stress. You can, just oversize the holes a little bit and you'll be just fine. So now that I have the holes, drilled out, the next thing I'm going to do is take care of all of the filing. And you can see how I'm using the hole in the door as kind of a stop for the back of the plastic. And it really makes sanding edges like that easy because you don't have material behind you flopping around. Whereas if you were using like the edge of a table. So it really didn't take all that much just to use a simple, hand file to straighten out that little line. And the next thing I'm going to do is the radius on the corner. Um, that's what I'm pointing to now. And for that, I'm just going to use a round file. And I know it's really hard to see on the camera. It's the only angle I could really get. But I'm just going to use that file and create the rounded part in the notch that I needed to clear inside the wheel well. Once I get that section with the round file done, I'll just go back through with my flat file and continue filing down the line until it's a nice straight with a nice curve. And that's what I'm doing here now, is just using the edge of the door as a support. It makes cleaning up this ABS really quick and easy with a decent file. So I'm going to use my belt sander simply to make that little notch right there that I'm pointing to. Um, this is the only time that I really like to use a sander on this stuff. Like all plastics, once it gets hot, it melts, which is why I like to use the tin snips to cut this stuff. But for this little application right here, I'm just going to use the belt sander to make this little notch. And all I have to do is guide it down to my tape or down to the traced line, and I'm pretty much done. So here you have it. This is the one that I had previously made. You can see I wrote up. And this is the one that we just made now. And you can see, pretty much duplicate of what we had on that side. So that is really, all the steps that it took for me to get to this point. I now have to make the other side for the front, and that's a lot more involved. I wanted to show how I did the whole pattern, and really it's kind of the texture that it gives, and we will get into that, and that will pretty much be it for this episode. So, hopefully up till now, everyone has kind of found, some value in this. I know there's a lot that goes into this, but like I said, when you're doing stuff and you can make it your own, and something that actually works and works well for you, um, you know, it's a good thing. So, you know, if you found something that works for you and this helped you, good. So let's look at that mesh pattern now. So I am going to show you how to make this textured ABS look like stamped steel. And that is going to be done using this honeycomb mesh. Now, it doesn't matter what the material you use. We're going to be marking the center of the holes. So it can be circular pattern, honeycomb, it doesn't matter. We just simply want the offset pattern of it. That's all we care about. So I've taped off a piece of this ABS and with this painter tape, just so we can see where we're going to mark. And we are simply going to take this honeycomb and tape it on here now, like this. So I'm going to define an area. Let's just say we wanted to, like I did for the Supra here, for the intercooler. So let's say we want to start here and we want to end here. Here. So I'm basically going to define my corners. And once I define my corners, I'm just going to start filling in the center of every hole. And this is a tedious process. But, you know, like with the Supra here, I didn't really have much of a choice. The way I wanted to do it with the aluminum screen would not work. So really, I didn't have much of a choice but to do, a perforated mesh like this. It is something that's kind of like, I don't know. After I did it, I was kind of like, I wish I would have just done it that way from the get-go because it looks so much better. But it is so much more work that, understandably, if you can make aluminum mesh like this work, why not? Yeah. So like I said, this takes a lot of time. I'm not going to fill in every hole, just enough that you get the idea. I think maybe one more row. Yeah. Okay, so what I have now is a dot pattern. And I could extend this all the way up and make this giant opening. But it's really unnecessary just to show you the whole process. Next step, I'm going to be using this little bit here. I really like these little bits for making pilot holes. It's got a really small tip to it, and it makes a nice, opening in this ABS. Very clean. So then I'm just going to start the fun process of drilling out the holes. Okay, so you can see we have all these holes drilled now. All these pilot holes are roughly the center of our mesh pattern. So now that we have our pilot holes done in this piece here, you can see this is the textured side. It might be kind of hard to see the holes, but we're just going to go back through and finalize the hole size. Okay, so this is what it looks like after it's done, and I hope it's showing up on camera pretty good. You could actually do this and leave it, alone. It doesn't look bad at all. When I peel the tape, there's the shiny side. Here's your textured side. This, looks fine. There's nothing you really have to do, but what I like to do to give it, like I said, that look of stamped steel is kind of take it a step further. And I do that with this little countersink bit. And I'll do some of the holes and then leave some of them undone so you can see the difference. Or hopefully see the difference. So this section right here, I hit with a countersink bit, and it puts a nice little bevel on those holes. It makes it look like stamped steel. I'll do some on the back. It kind of shows up better on the shiny plastic here. Well, hopefully this shows up pretty good. This section right here, I hit with that countersink bit, and this section is just drilled. So just adding that little bit of a detail makes a huge difference in how this ABS looks, you know, in the final state. So I do this to all the holes, or will be doing this to the rest of the holes, I should say, for the Supra. And it's not a detail that I think anyone's ever really going to pick up on, but it's a small detail that means a lot to me, because I think it's just, I don't know, putting an edge of refinement into everything. And that's just a little trick that I've learned over the years to make this ABS look really, really, you know, close to something like a factory would put out. So yeah, that's pretty much how I've done every step on these fender liners. So that is basically going to wrap it up for this episode. I know there was a lot of information in there. If there's something that I need to go over further, please ask. You know, I really hope that there's information that somebody, you know, out there needed, because this is, like I said, something that we've all run across, I think, at one point or another, where we've needed answers. And this is just how I do it. And, you know, like I said, this has worked for me many times. And, you know, if it works for you, then great. You know, that was the whole point. So, you know, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe, as always, and we will catch you next time.